Chu Zitang stormed out of school, furious. While the other students were chilling at a cafe, she ran into Qin Li standing next to the car, stiff as a statue. She didn't waste a second, started laying into him, calling him an idiot and telling him to open the door already. Her backpack slammed straight into his chest. Zitang unloaded a year's worth of frustration, saying he was dead weight to the family and needed to get his act together and find a real job. Before getting in, she dropped one last order. Next time, park far away. She couldn't stand the idea of her classmates seeing her with him. Inside the car, the tension was thick. She looked at Qin Li in the driver's seat with pure disgust, wondering how such a mediocre man had managed to latch onto her sister's life. The ride ended at the Chu family mansion. Inside, it was a completely different vibe. Han Jing, Qin Li's mother-in-law, was welcoming Liu Minhao like an honored guest. To her, he was basically a blessing. The classic successful childhood friend, Minhao, came to visit the matriarch, but his attention quickly shifted to the house's silent husband. He asked about the son-in-law who always stayed in the shadows. Sensing his tone, Han Jing brushed it off, saying Zitang would be back any minute while keeping her focus on her golden guest, acting like the man who had just parked the car didn't even exist. Zitang barely stepped inside before barking orders. Her tone was sharp. Either the freeloader came downstairs now, or she'd drag him out herself. Already on edge, she flung open Qin Li's door and fired off insults, telling him to clean his ears because her mother was losing patience. To her, he acted like he owned the place, and that was unacceptable, but her anger flipped to shock in an instant. As she burst into the dark room, Zitang let out a scream that echoed through the entire house. Qin Li was there, barely dressed, surrounded by a strange glow cutting through the darkness. Horrified, cursing his entire bloodline, she covered her face and bolted down the hallway, shouting for everyone to hear that the guy was naked in his room. Inside, though, it was a different scene. Ignoring the chaos, Qin Li felt his body vibrating. A powerful energy surged through him as he stood still, back turned. The moment he opened his eyes, the air grew heavy. A mystical light flickered between his fingers, and it hit him. 10 years of waiting were over. The plan had worked. The rush of victory didn't last. Suddenly, a sharp pain tore through his chest. Qin Li opened his mouth in a silent scream, feeling the weight of a decade of silence breaking apart. He touched his face, trying to recognize his own voice, something that felt buried in another life. The moment was cut short by another shout from downstairs, demanding his presence. Time to hide was over. Dressed and ready, Qin Li stepped out into a storm of insults. The mansion hallway showed off luxury fit for royalty, but the living room was full of venom. Han Jing greeted him with open hostility, saying he must have been born deaf for taking so long. Liu Minhao didn't even try to hide his mockery. With a smirk, he pretended not to recognize Qin Li. He offered a handshake with fake politeness, only to immediately call him a complete idiot to his face. Then he went further, labeling him a parasite who married Xin Jing for the Chu family fortune. The final insult came with an offer of 10,000 just to make him disappear, since in Liu's eyes he wasn't worthy of his wife. What no one expected was a physical response. During the handshake, Qin Li applied crushing force. Liu's scream of pain cut through the room, shocking everyone. With a look charged by a strange new energy, almost excited, the mute finally broke his silence and said his own name out loud. Everyone froze. Han Jing and Zitang stood there, stunned, processing the fact that the man they'd ignored for years had just spoken. Liu, furious and clutching his hand, started yelling that Qin Li was a fraud, an actor who had been pretending to be useless all this time to deceive the family. The shouting only stopped when Han Jing shut it down, but the silence that followed was broken by the sharp ring of her phone. Chaos erupted with that call. On the other end, a panicked voice delivered the news. Han Jing's daughter had been taken by the police. Qin Li stayed turned away, but his eyes caught the fear on Chu Zitang's face. Without hesitation, he grabbed her arm and demanded to know what had happened to Xin Jing. Through tears, she explained. Serious trouble at the company and an immediate arrest order. Letting her go, Qin Li cast a cold glance at everyone. To his mother-in-law, that look screamed coward running from a sinking ship. Meanwhile, Liu Minhao tried to regain control, boasting about his powerful connections and promising to fix everything, playing the hero. Cut to the Eagle Constellation headquarters. It looked like a battlefield. On one side, police and onlookers. On the other, a woman with a face full of acne shouting at the top of her lungs, demanding millions in compensation over a supposedly defective cosmetic product. At the center of it all, Chu Xinjing stood firm, her composure unshaken despite being surrounded by chaos. Han Jing showed up right behind, outraged at the outrageous demand, calling it straight-up extortion. Minhwa tried to step in, throwing around charm and mentioning that the police chief was his drinking buddy, but the woman, Li Wan, didn't budge. Then she dropped the bomb. She was a close relative of Mayor Li Yusheng. The atmosphere froze. Minhwa nearly choked on his own saliva, and the Chu family's confidence collapsed in seconds. If the mayor was involved, Liu's connections meant nothing. In that moment of absolute silence and looming defeat, a shadow appeared behind them. Qin Li showed up out of nowhere, stared down the furious woman, and with chilling calm gave an ultimatum. He only needed 10 minutes to end the whole circus. Locking eyes with the acne-covered woman, Qin Li made his bet, 10 minutes to clear her face, or the case would be over. The silence that followed was pure shock. Xinjing, unable to believe what she was hearing, looked at her husband and barely managed to ask when he had gotten his voice back. Liu Minhwa, furious, tried to step in. To him, Qin Li was just bringing more disgrace to the Chu family with cheap tricks. Xinjing hesitated too, afraid his actions would only make her situation worse. That's when he looked straight at her, with a confidence she had never seen before, and told her not to be afraid. The passive man from before was gone. It was time for him to act like her husband and protect her. While Minhwa and the crowd kept mocking him, reminding everyone he was just a mute living off his mother-in-law, Qin Li ignored it all. He calmly stated he knew exactly how to restore the woman's skin. Li Wan laughed at the proposal, but accepted the challenge with a twisted condition. If her face didn't improve, she would make him pay in the worst way. Xinjing froze. She grabbed Qin Li's arm, convinced he had completely lost his mind and was about to destroy everything with that absurd promise. But he went straight to the point. The marks on her face weren't acne, they were burns. He asked Xinjing to help gather the ingredients for the remedy, maintaining a calm that bordered on arrogance. Watching from the sidelines, Minhwa crossed his arms with a malicious grin, waiting for the moment Qin Li would fail and Xinjing would be dragged off to jail. Before handing over the materials, she made Qin Li promise that no matter what happened, the family wouldn't take the fall for this madness. The Chu family watched from a distance, still unable to process that the man standing in the center of the room was no longer the silent dog they used to kick around. Qin Li moved with surgical precision, mixing ingredients on the table like he had done it for centuries. To him, that potion was the perfect weapon to crush the humiliation he had endured. He handed the steaming bowl of cream to the woman. People around them grimaced. Some thought the smell alone would make everyone sick, while others, like Minhwa, smirked, waiting for disaster. The woman took it cautiously, warning that if her face got worse, Qin Li's life would become hell. Without patience for her drama, Qin Li stepped forward, grabbed the ointment, and forcefully spread it across her face. He muttered something cryptic, leaving her completely confused. In the next instant, the cream started working. She screamed in pain as her skin burned and ran toward the bathroom, while the critics in the room were already declaring Qin Li's defeat. The tense silence was broken by another scream from the hallway. But this time it wasn't pain. The woman came running back, glowing, her skin smooth as porcelain. The miracle was real. Liu Minhao's jaw nearly hit the floor, and the others began whispering in disbelief. Xinjing stepped closer, stunned, trying to understand how her husband had suddenly become a master of medicine overnight. Before she could get answers, the now cured woman, full of confidence, begged Qin Li to examine her uncle, who was in critical condition. She promised a fortune if he agreed. Qin Li accepted without hesitation, leaving Xinjing in shock. To her, he had completely lost his mind. She tried to stop him, reminding him that clearing up skin was one thing, but getting involved in serious medical cases without a license was asking for trouble. His response was short. He knew exactly what he was doing. Xinjing snapped in frustration. She warned that if he thought he could bring people back from the brink just like that, the Chu family wouldn't lift a finger to save him. Ignoring her, Qin Li simply lowered his head and moved forward. He was done being underestimated and coldly assured her he wouldn't bring trouble to the Chu family. The scene shifted to Jiangcheng Municipal Hospital, where the ICU lights never went off. Mayor Li Yusheng was pressuring the doctors, but the report was grim. The patient was deteriorating, and surgery now would be suicide. Into that atmosphere of impending loss, the woman Qin Li had helped arrived, dragging him along. With hope in her voice, she introduced Qin Li to the mayor as a phenomenal expert in traditional medicine, claiming he was the only one who could save her uncle. Mayor Yusheng looked him up and down with clear suspicion. To him, Qin Li didn't even look 18. Everything exploded when the mayor demanded Qin Li's medical credentials, and Qin Li calmly admitted he had none. Yusheng lost his temper, shouting that this was no place for jokes and making it clear no unlicensed fraud would get near that ward. Embarrassed, the girl apologized and told Chin-Li it was better for him to leave before things got worse. But fate had other plans. A nurse burst out of the ICU in panic, screaming for help as the patient's condition suddenly crashed. Chaos took over the hallway. As Mayor Li Yusheng and his niece rushed into the room in desperation, Chin-Li stood like a rock, watching the chaos with icy calm. Inside, it looked like death had already claimed the place. The mayor begged for a miracle, but the chief doctor lowered his head, admitting there was nothing left to be done. Medicine had reached its limit. In that funeral-like silence, Chin-Li stepped forward. He said the old man could still be saved. The mayor, completely losing it, told the kid to shut up and get out. Chin-Li didn't back down. Instead, he made one final move, a bet. If he saved the mayor's father, Yusheng would have to kneel and apologize. If he failed, he could be arrested for fraud on the spot. Yusheng thought he was insane, and the pink-haired girl begged him to stop. Chin-Li just shrugged and turned to leave, making it clear that if the old man died, it would be because of their stubbornness. Out in the hallway, he ran into Xinjing, who watched him with pure disdain. She called him a failure and told him to go home before he dragged the family name even lower. Chin-Li was already walking away when a disturbing noise came from the ICU. The patient began convulsing violently, and the doctor froze, clueless. Panic took over again, and everyone's eyes instinctively turned to the only person who seemed to know what to do. The room felt like a wake. The heart monitor showed a flat, endless line, the sharp tone confirming the old man's heart had stopped. The exhausted doctor shut off the machines and delivered the verdict. The mayor's father was dead. Li Yusheng collapsed, crying and blaming himself. He called himself an unworthy son, unable to understand how his father's health had fallen apart so fast. But the grief didn't last long. The ICU doors slammed open. Chin-Li stormed in like a force of nature, ordering everyone out of his way with an authority no one dared question. He refused to accept that diagnosis. As he approached the body, flashes of his master, the monk who trained him, ran through his mind. The 10-year vow of silence wasn't punishment, it was preparation for this exact moment. The air in the room began to vibrate. To the shock of the mayor and the medical staff, a strange glow radiated from Chin-Li's hands. With supernatural precision, he pulled out acupuncture needles and drove them into the old man's chest. Every movement carried the energy he had built up over a decade. Fate had put him there to test his power. The final move was a needle placed carefully at the man's neck. The room went completely silent until the impossible happened. The dead man coughed. His eyes shot open as he gasped for air, staring in confusion at the young man in front of him. The mayor and his niece froze, unable to believe what they were seeing. Chin-Li let out a heavy breath, feeling the strain drain his energy, while the chief doctor stepped back in terror at something modern medicine could never explain. The ICU turned into a miracle scene. The man who had just been declared dead was now sitting up in bed, confused but alive. His niece and the mayor rushed to him, crying and laughing, while the old man weakly tried to calm them, apologizing for the scare. Taking advantage of the moment, Chin-Li turned and headed for the door, a faint smile on his face. He had done what he came to do, but he didn't get far. A heavy thud echoed behind him. Mayor Li Yusheng had dropped to his knees, calling him master in front of everyone. With his forehead to the ground, the mayor begged for forgiveness for his arrogance and how he had treated him. Chin-Li paused, glanced back, and mentioned the bet, but without bitterness. He said he understood a son's desperation, and that saving a life was what mattered. The mayor's niece, still shaken, went further. She demanded his bank details and promised to transfer $500,000 that very night in gratitude. Back in the hallway, the mood shifted again. Xinjing was there, full of venom. To her, Chin-Li was just showing off and sticking his nose where it didn't belong for attention. Hidden in the shadows, Liu Minhao watched everything with burning hatred, seeing his plan to humiliate Chin-Li completely fall apart. Later that night, Chin-Li and Xinjing returned to the brightly lit mansion. Han-Jing, on the verge of a breakdown, only cared about her daughter. The moment she saw him, she unloaded her frustration, demanding to know where he had been and ordering him to clean the house immediately. Exhausted, Xinjing told her mother to go rest. After a while, silence returned to the house. Chin-Li entered his wife's room with his usual calm expression and simply stated that the chores were done. But as he stepped inside, he was caught off guard. Xinjing was relaxing on the floor in a light robe that didn't leave much to the imagination. The mood shifted instantly when she, in a tone he had never heard before, invited him to do yoga with her right there. As she stretched on the sofa, her thoughts drifted. She remembered Zitang's harsh rumors, claiming Qin Li chased after any woman he could, but reality said otherwise. He had only helped her sister get home safely. Without hesitation, Qin Li started changing right there, and Xin Jing, acting on instinct, stepped into his space without knocking, letting him see her silhouette on purpose. She admitted she didn't believe her sister's accusations. She knew Zitang's personality well, and Qin Li wasn't the kind of man to cross that line. Her tone softened as she acknowledged something new. Today, he had shown a strength she never imagined. He had stood like a wall protecting the family. With that newfound respect, she made a request. There would be a family gathering the next day, and she wanted him by her side. Without even turning around, keeping his composed stance, Qin Li agreed. Before drifting off from exhaustion on the sofa, Xin Jing quietly said, "Thank you." And for the first time in a long while, Qin Li felt his heart skip a beat. The next day dawned warm and pleasant. In front of the imposing Grand Royal International Hotel, the place was buzzing. Inside, the Chu family elite had already gathered around a massive round table. The patriarch, wearing a satisfied smile, watched relatives greet each other with fake smiles and polite nods. It was the first official gathering of the year, and he gave the signal for everyone to sit. The game of appearances was about to begin. Expensive wine flowed as the family's little performance kicked off. Qin Li observed everything with a faint smirk, especially Chu Guitian, the manipulative witch aunt who loved calling the shots. Wasting no time, she fired the first shot at Xin Jing. When were she and her husband finally going to stop stalling and have a child? Clearly uncomfortable, Xin Jing tried to brush it off, saying they weren't in a hurry, but her aunt wouldn't let it go, insisting youth doesn't last forever and that her father wouldn't be happy about the delay. To make things worse, she started praising her own son-in-law, Chen Wen, calling him the perfect man, someone with influence in the government who never caused trouble for his mother-in-law. The jab at Qin Li's so-called mediocrity was obvious. The peak of the show-off moment came when Chen Wen presented a gift to the patriarch. The entire room fell silent as he opened a luxurious box, revealing what he claimed was a porcelain bowl from the Yuan dynasty. The uncle was stunned, and whispers spread as guests heard the price, $30,000. Chen Wen puffed up with pride, saying he knew about his uncle's love for antiques and spared no effort to get something unforgettable. While everyone admired the piece and Chen Wen's display, Qin Li remained the only one unfazed. He knew the truth. That bowl was garbage, nothing more than a cheap replica, artificially aged to look ancient, a crude fake dressed up as a relic. Noticing Qin Li's look, Chen Wen let out a mocking laugh and challenged him in front of everyone, telling the useless son-in-law to take a closer look, since he probably had never seen anything so valuable in his life. Chen Wen kept running his mouth, mocking Qin Li as nothing more than a freeloader living off his wife and mother-in-law. He even went as far as offering him a janitor job in the department he'd soon be running, claiming that even a low salary would be better than being a parasite. Xin Jing snapped. She couldn't stand seeing her husband humiliated like that and demanded respect, reminding Chen Wen that Qin Li was part of the family too. But Chen Wen didn't care. He kept pushing, saying Qin Li was the only one there who couldn't even afford a proper gift. That's when Qin Li stood up. Without any fancy box in hand, he dropped the bomb. The so-called Yuan dynasty bowl was completely fake. The room exploded. Chen Wen laughed it off, calling him crazy and reminding everyone how much he had paid. His wife started shouting, accusing Qin Li of slander out of jealousy, but Qin Li didn't budge. With a cold certainty, he repeated that the porcelain was trash, and no price tag could change that. Offended, Chen Wen slammed his wine down and went personal, saying a nobody like Qin Li had no right to judge antiques. Qin Li, eyes sharp, promised to prove it in front of everyone. Even the patriarch, Chu Ding, tried to shut him down, while Aunt Guitian called him an out-of-control hater. Even Xin Jing, trying to calm things down, asked him to stop. She wanted to believe in Chen Wen's good intentions to avoid ruining the family gathering, but fate had other plans. Mayor Li Yusheng, who happened to be at the hotel for a meeting, overheard the commotion about a possible fake and decided to step in and see for himself. Chen Wen's face instantly went pale. Seeing the most powerful man in the city take interest in the relic made his heart race. He had no idea if this would be his big moment or the end of his reputation. At first, Chen Wen was thrilled. He never imagined someone like Mayor Li would even acknowledge him, let alone walk in with other high-profile guests. But the mood flipped instantly. The moment the mayor spotted Qin Li, he ignored everyone else and went straight to thank him for what he had done the day before. Qin Li, wanting to keep a low profile, shut it down quickly. Chen Wen, thinking the mayor was mistaken, tried to interrupt, and got immediately shut down. The mayor didn't like his tone, and Chen Wen, shaking, nearly dropped to his knees, humiliating himself just to calm things down. Trying to shift the focus, the mayor asked what was going on. Chin-Li explained that his wife's family was arguing over whether an antique was real or fake. The mayor glanced at Chen Wen's gift and immediately doubted its authenticity. Without wasting time, he called over Venerable Wu, a legendary expert in Yuan dynasty relics, who happened to be nearby. Wu Fangmao approached with a faint smile. Chen Wen broke into a cold sweat. He had spent a fortune on that bowl and needed it to be real. The expert examined the colors and at first glance said it seemed legitimate. Chen Wen let out a breath of relief, already preparing to mock Chin-Li again. But Chin-Li didn't back down. He looked straight at the master and asked if he was absolutely certain. The challenge in his tone made Wu Fangmao pause. The expert realized the young man had spotted something he hadn't. With a chuckle at Chin-Li's boldness, Wu Fangmao revealed the truth. The piece was a high-end fake. He explained that while it was technically well-made and artificially aged, it lacked the soul of true Yuan pieces. Back then, patterns were handmade and unique, with subtle marks that this replica failed to replicate. Just like that, Chen Wen's grand display turned to dust in front of everyone. Wu Fangmao couldn't take his eyes off the bowls Chen Wen had pushed toward Chu Ding. The expert immediately spotted the death mark hidden in the pieces, a detail that invalidated everything. In the middle of the chaos, Chu Ding's wife tried to wash her hands of the situation, while Gu Tian lost her patience with her son, furious that he had gifted such trash. The turning point came when Fang Mao started praising Chin-Li. The master was impressed. The kid had caught a flaw in what looked like a perfect replica. With a focused, serious look, Chin-Li listened as he was invited to join the experts department, but the moment of victory was cut short by the mayor. Excited by Chin-Li's talent, he insisted on taking him along as a guest of honor for a private talk. Before leaving, Chin-Li said goodbye to his in-laws, promising to return once Chu Ding finished eating. Watching the scene, Gu Tian commented that Han Jing had outdone Chen Wen. After all, now their family had direct access to the mayor. Han Jing stayed quiet. No one had expected that level of recognition. Inside the car, the tone shifted. The mayor opened up about the curse affecting his family. Over the past 2 months, everyone had fallen ill without explanation, yet doctors found nothing wrong. Chin-Li memorized the timeline and asked to check his pulse. Using his energy to trace the issue, he felt the root of the problem. His conclusion was simple: no need to panic, but the mayor should cancel any plans for that night. Chin-Li promised to come to his house and handle everything. Relieved, the mayor agreed immediately, treating him like a top-tier doctor. Meanwhile, a completely drunk Chu Ding was being dragged to a car, mumbling that Chin-Li had restored his pride that day. Under the silent gazes of Xinjing and Zitang, the car drove off. Chin-Li told them to go home and rest, then checked his phone and set his route. His destination, Mayor Li's mansion, where the real challenge was just beginning. The GPS led him straight into a deserted street, far from traffic and crowds. The silence was broken by a familiar, mocking smile. Liu Minhao was waiting for him, and he wasn't alone. A group of heavy hitters stood behind him, the kind that didn't hesitate to break bones. Liu raised 2 fingers, reminding Chin-Li he had already let him go twice that day. His tone was full of mockery, treating him like garbage. Chin-Li didn't even blink. Calm as ever, he fired back, saying that even after crushing an insect, its stench still lingers. Offended, Liu adjusted his tie and gave the signal. The thugs rushed in, calling Chin-Li a sacrifice as they charged with weapons. But his reaction was the complete opposite of what they expected. Without fear, he channeled his energy and exploded into motion. The first attacker didn't even see the strike coming. He dropped instantly with a scream. Chin-Li spun and took down the second, his defense untouchable. A third tried his luck, only to be crushed by raw force. Chin-Li was on a completely different level. Liu Minhao froze, his arrogance shattered as he watched his men fall one by one like dominoes. The man he called a worm now dominated the scene. With a cold gaze, Chin-Li pointed at him and called him out. Stop barking from afar and fight him directly. Liu didn't take the challenge. While his defeated men lay scattered on the ground, the last coward ran off screaming, too afraid to face him. The path was clear. Chin-Li moved on, leaving the chaos behind and focusing on what mattered, the mayor's residence. He soon arrived in a high-end district where city noise gave way to silence and luxury. He stopped in front of a massive stone mansion guarded by lion statues. Before he could even take it in, the door opened. The mayor himself, smiling anxiously, said they had been waiting, but the welcome didn't last long. As they stepped inside, a piercing scream echoed through the house, sending chills down their spines. Chin-Li's instincts kicked in immediately. In the bedroom, the scene was pure horror. The mayor rushed to his wife, asking about their son, but what they saw made no sense. The boy wasn't just sick, he was floating, lifted by a mass of dark smoke that seemed to swallow the light around it. His cries were heartbreaking. The mayor begged for help, and Chin Li didn't hesitate. He said he would handle it. That's when the child's face twisted into something unnatural. The entity possessing him let out a low, threatening growl, warning Chin Li to stay out of it. He ignored it. Channeling his energy, Chin Li launched forward, striking the invisible force to tear the boy free. After a fierce clash, the smoke recoiled, and the child dropped back onto the bed. But it wasn't over. As dark smoke leaked from the boy's mouth, Chin Li saw the entity's final move. It was concentrating at a single point on the boy's forehead, trying to drain what little life he had left. Chin Li took a deep breath, focusing his purification technique to end it once and for all. The tension spiked instantly. Out of nowhere, the mayor and his wife changed their tone. The woman started screaming, accusing her husband of bringing trash into the house that would kill their son. Chin Li didn't waste time on the drama. He ordered her to be quiet, realizing the dark energy was already affecting their minds. The shadow creature lifted the boy again. The child screamed, completely helpless, but Chin Li attacked without hesitation. Using his power, he struck the entity and shattered the dark web binding the boy. The result was immediate. The child woke up on the bed, calling for his mother, who collapsed over him in tears of relief. With his back to the family, Li told everyone to stay calm. The immediate danger was over, but he wanted to find the source of the curse. As he searched the room and asked about any strange objects or recent changes, the mayor suddenly went pale. Zeng couldn't recall any incidents, but he mentioned 2 stone lions that had just arrived. Li was already ahead of him. He crouched down, searched briefly, and stood back up holding a small glowing stone. That was the core of the problem. The mayor was stunned as Li explained. Every time he passed by those lions, the stone drained his energy and spread the curse through the family, leaving them exhausted and aggressive. Without hesitation, Li crushed the stone with his bare fingers, ending the cycle. The mayor's wife tried to apologize and thank him for saving their son, but Li cut her off. He wasn't there for praise. Seeing the level of skill in front of him, the mayor didn't want to miss his chance. He offered Li a ride and even promised to open a clinic for him. Serious as he was, even Li didn't expect that kind of offer. The clinic, bearing Li's name, was the mayor's way of showing gratitude. Li accepted. For him, it would be a place to help others and refine his techniques. But deep down, it was about honoring his parents' legacy. The ride back seemed calm, until Li suddenly opened his eyes and told the driver to stop immediately. The driver slammed the brakes, nearly throwing him forward. Recovering, Li locked his gaze on the sidewalk. There stood Chu Xinying, wearing a long dress, clearly waiting for someone in the middle of the night. As the taxi rolled slowly forward, Li tried to process what his wife was doing there. The driver made a sly comment, complimenting her looks. But the scene changed fast when another woman appeared, dressed in bold latex, drawing attention from everyone nearby. At first, Li thought she was just a friend. Then came the shock. The two hugged and started kissing right there in the street. The driver, stunned, pulled out his phone to record, while Li felt the ground slip beneath him, questioning everything he thought he knew. Inside a bar later, the woman in latex was ordering the strongest drinks on the menu. She complained about Xinying's absence, saying she felt forgotten. Xinying blamed work, but her friend brushed it off. Insisting responsibilities could wait, that moment was theirs. The night felt too perfect to dwell on problems, so the redhead pushed her, time to forget everything and have fun. Xinying agreed, promising she wouldn't go home sober. Bottles piled up and the drinks kept flowing. As the alcohol hit, emotions surfaced. Xinying opened up about being forced into a meaningless marriage and enduring constant gossip from her family. Her friend listened with a knowing smile, pouring more drinks to drown out the pain of betrayal and disrespect. They kept going until exhaustion finally took over. Barely able to walk, the two left the bar. The redhead had to carry Xinying upstairs since she could barely stand. But the moment the door opened, danger was waiting. Liu Minghao stepped out of the shadows with a sinister smile, taking control and guiding the drunk woman to a round sofa, with her friend silently going along with it. Minghao tossed Xinying onto the bed, completely unconscious, and began mocking the situation. He sneered that she shouldn't have married an idiot if she didn't want to end up in his hands. A hidden camera recorded everything as he moved closer to the defenseless woman. The plan was cut short by a violent knock on the door. Minghao froze. A female voice from outside announced a delivery. He assumed it was another accomplice, but had no idea what was coming. On the other side, Chin Li stood with a cold smile, ready to end everything. Minghao couldn't understand how his enemy had appeared out of nowhere. Seeing Lee's deadly gaze, he tried to play it off, claiming it was all a misunderstanding and that he was just helping a drunk girl. Qin didn't listen. One brutal punch sent Minghao flying straight into the sofa. The impact was devastating. Minghao collapsed, coughing up blood. Qin approached, eyes filled with fury, leaned down, and asked how he wanted to die. Completely broken, Minghao crawled to his feet, begging for mercy and promising to disappear forever. Qin glanced at his unconscious wife and coldly told him to get out. Minghao pretended to be grateful, but the poison in his heart remained. As he turned to leave, he suddenly pulled out a knife and threw it at Qin, cursing him. The counterattack was instant. Qin didn't flinch. He struck with precision, driving a needle into the man's vital points, paralyzing him instantly. Minghao dropped to the floor, twitching and foaming, completely helpless. With a powerful kick, Qin sent him flying out of the room, where the red-headed accomplice was already passed out in the hallway, door locked. Qin turned back to his wife, making a dry comment about how absurd the day had been. It was time to clean up the mess. Channeling his energy, he used another needle on her arm to neutralize the alcohol and toxins. Within seconds, she began to respond. He watched as her eyes slowly opened and asked how she felt. Xinying tried to speak, still unsure if what she was feeling was real. The reaction was immediate. The moment she saw Qin, she recoiled as if facing a monster. Without giving him a chance to explain, she slapped him hard across the face, calling him disgusting. Qin, feeling the sting, tried to explain he had just saved her life, but her mind was a chaotic mix of confusion and alcohol. Ying covered her face, shaken, yelling that no one would believe that ridiculous story. Frustrated and done with the drama, Lee walked toward the door. Before leaving, he made it clear he hadn't laid a finger on her, and she was free to believe whatever she wanted. A pillow slammed against the door as it shut, followed by more insults. Alone in the room, Ying complained about her bad luck, unaware that a hidden camera in the corner was recording everything. Hours later, Lee was resting on a park bench when his phone rang. It was Lija Wang. She was amazed by the results of the medicinal cream he had made and wanted to place a massive order. To her, it was a miracle product that left skin flawless. Lee smiled, already calculating production, but the request caught him off guard. Lija wanted 200 jars and offered 2 million up front. The amount was absurd compared to the cost of materials, but she insisted, revealing that the money was meant to help get Lee's clinic off the ground. Grateful, he accepted. His dream was finally becoming real. Meanwhile, back in the bedroom, it was past 1 a.m. Ying sat on the bed, sobering up, regret hitting hard. She remembered the slap, the insults, and now anger was turning into anxiety. When the door finally creaked open and Lee walked in, the atmosphere froze. She broke the silence, asking if he was just getting back, but he didn't answer. He simply said he had business to take care of. Jealous? Ying complained that he hadn't told her anything. Lee felt the weight of the unfair accusation but stayed silent as she kept going. Realizing she had gone too far, she tried to explain, but he didn't even look back. Clutching her pillow like a shield, she finally revealed the truth. She had been fired. Letting her frustration spill out, she blamed Lee and Leah Wang, saying their growing partnership had forced her out of the company. Lee turned to her, confused. What did his work have to do with her losing her job? For Ying, the fear was real. Without income, how would they survive? That's when Lee sat down and laid it all out. He reminded her he had saved the mayor's father and son, and as a reward, he now owned his own clinic. Money wouldn't be an issue. If she wanted, she could even help run it with him. Ying froze, thinking it was just a lie to comfort her. As they headed upstairs, Lee told her to think it over. The grand opening was coming soon. Deep down, she felt relief and realized she had misjudged him again. She knew she needed to apologize, but the peace didn't last. The next morning, loud knocks on the door dragged Lee out of bed. Half asleep and already expecting trouble, he went to open it. Standing there was Tang Jiding, his former classmate and Ying's best friend. She walked in throwing insults, questioning how someone like Ying ended up married to a guy like him. To her, it was like throwing a rose in the trash. Lee sighed. He remembered exactly how annoying Tang had been back in school and knew the day was about to get long. Tang wasted no time. She called out for Jing and dragged them both out for a shopping spree. Soon, the three of them were crossing the city's main bridge, with Lee driving while the two chatted non-stop. When Jing asked where they were going, Tang just smiled. They were headed to the tallest tower in the area, where an exclusive auction for the elite was taking place. At the entrance, security checked their luxury invitations, and Tang made sure to point out Lee following behind. The event was a blind auction of precious stones, a risky game where you bid first and only later find out if you scored a fortune or worthless junk. The room was calm, with few guests and wine flowing. Tang, eager to embarrass him, pushed Lee to buy something decent for his wife. A new item appeared, the famous Hermit Stone. Bidding quickly climbed past 200,000, but Lee just yawned, completely uninterested. Then something in the corner caught his attention. Ignoring the main auction, he walked over to a discarded wooden box filled with rough gray stones. To everyone else, it was trash, but to Lee, they pulsed with a deep violet energy that resonated with his own. Tang kept whispering in Jing's ear, warning that if Lee dared to give her a fake, there would be a scene. But when they turned back, he was gone. They found him talking to an attendant near the discard pile. Lee asked the price of one of the ugly stones, and the man laughed. It was scrap, worth about 100 yen, basically a joke item. Ignoring the mockery, Lee pulled out some loose change, placed it on the tray, pointed at a gray stone, and asked the attendant to crack it open right there. From a distance, Tang and Jing watched, and Tang didn't miss the chance to mock him, saying he had finally found his place digging through trash. Not satisfied, Tang grabbed Jing's hand and started loudly insulting Lee in the middle of the room, comparing him to a pig rooting through mud and calling him a scammer, trying to pass off junk as something valuable. While she kept shouting, the auction staff cleaned the stone. The moment they placed the fragment under a microscope, everything changed. The expert's shout echoed through the room. The scrap contained a flawless emerald. The entire hall froze. Jing and Tang stood there in shock, unable to believe it. The wealthy guests who had ignored the box were now staring, eyes wide, at the gem someone had thrown away like trash. The crowd swarmed Lee instantly. A woman jumped in with an offer of 30,000. Another guy pushed it to 50,000, trying to secure the piece. Then everything stopped when an imposing man stepped in. It was Chief Tang, the Jade King of Yangcheng, and by coincidence, Tang Jiding's father. The veteran jeweler didn't waste time and dropped the truth. The stone was worth 5 million yuan. Lee stayed calm and said the gem belonged to his wife, so the decision was hers. Ying froze, staring at the fortune in his hands, unable to speak. To her jealous friend's despair, Ying agreed to sell it to Chief Tang, saying it was an honor to deal with someone of his level. Amused by her composure, Chief Tang pulled out his checkbook. Curious, he asked Lee how an amateur had spotted what experts missed. Lee just shrugged, saying it was luck, that the stone looked ordinary. The room buzzed, assuming it was beginner's luck, but the jeweler shut everyone down, demanding respect for the master's instinct now that the gem was his. The tension peaked. Tang Jiding couldn't process how the value had skyrocketed like that. But the real shock came next. The stone suddenly cracked in half, turning into what looked like useless mineral. She froze, looking at her father for answers, but the Jade King simply laughed. He wasn't surprised. With a knowing look, he invited Lee to visit his workshop anytime, recognizing that the young man had a special eye. Lee tried to respond, but the old man cut him off, telling him not to rush and to think about the offer. Father and daughter left, with the veteran quietly confirming he had already seen Lee's potential long before anyone else. On the way home, the atmosphere in the car was electric. Ying drove fast down the empty road, firing questions non-stop. She demanded the truth. How did he know what he was doing at the auction? To her, he had been lying all along, pretending to be useless while hiding insane abilities. Lee simply stared ahead, letting her words pass. His mind drifted back to the day he met the old master who changed his life. The man handed him a sacred manuscript, promising that after 10 years of cultivating his energy and living in silence, he would stand above all others. That was the moment Lee's fate was sealed. Back in the present, he tried to explain there was no deception. He had just done what needed to be done, but Ying cut him off. She didn't want philosophical answers. She asked the one question that mattered. Why did he choose to marry her? Lee finally turned to look at her, ready to remind her of everything they had been through. The memory hit Ying mid-drive. Lee standing up to a bully with nothing but a bowl of soup and sharp words, humiliating the guy. Without hesitation, she had stepped in, breaking the bully's arm and driving the group away to protect him. A faint smile appeared on her face as she remembered every detail. Lee took the moment to remind her she was the one who proposed to him right after graduation. It had been the happiest moment of his life, but the warmth faded quickly, as both knew the marriage had turned into nothing more than a contract. Confused, she asked how he could feel no resentment after everything. Lee shook his head, speaking honestly. He had no space for hatred. The Chu family had never directly mistreated him, and deep down, he had always seen her as his real wife. Ying lowered her head, overwhelmed with shame. Silence filled the car. To break it, Lee mentioned the opening of his clinic and formally invited her. She reacted with skepticism, thinking it was a joke. Saving lives required real skill. Still focused on the road, Lee stood firm. This was his life's mission. He asked her to trust him. Her answer came sharp. If he messed up, no one would go to jail in his place. The grand opening of the Yin-Yang Treatment Center shook the city with fireworks and buzz, but inside, the atmosphere was full of mockery. Lee accepted it without hesitation, even though anyone could see Xinjing was worried about him, except him. Curious onlookers wandered in, whispering and doubting his abilities, treating everything like a cheap show. Chuding didn't stay quiet. He defended his son-in-law fiercely, reminding everyone that Lee's skills had earned the mayor's gratitude and even secured the clinic building. That was all Chen Wen needed. He stepped in, attacking Lee personally, calling him arrogant and saying opening the clinic was basically signing his own death certificate. Lee's response was simple. He didn't see the logic in that comparison and shrugged it off. Furious, Chen Wen tried to intimidate him by bringing up political connections and past tension with the mayor's office. Then everything changed. Mayor Li Yusheng walked in, accompanied by his sister, both carrying gifts. Without holding back, they praised Li as the savior of their family. The entire room froze. The people who came to mock him went silent. Even Chen Wen was left speechless, realizing that Li's connection with the mayor ran far deeper than anyone had imagined. While the mayor praised the clinic's structure and Qin Li welcomed guests with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing, the family atmosphere started to sour. Chu Qingming, frustrated by his success, slammed her anger onto the front desk, ignoring her husband's broken sobs as he sat there reduced to quiet misery. The event carried on, until chaos from outside shattered everything. A desperate scream for help echoed at the entrance, someone begging Qin Li to save a child's life. The cry cut through the celebration, leaving Mayor Li Yusheng confused. Outside, it was pure panic, a father on his knees surrounded by a crowd, holding his son Haobo, whose face had turned purple as he choked on his own vomit. Qin Li didn't hesitate. He pushed through the crowd, shouting that he was a doctor, and rushed to the boy. People were panicking. Some insisted they needed a bigger hospital, doubting this weird cold could be handled there. Meanwhile, Chen Wen's companion took the chance to throw insults, and Wen himself watched from afar, hoping for Li's failure. Ignoring all of it, Qin Li ordered them to bring the boy inside immediately. With the crowd breathing down his neck, he laid the child down and began his examination. Instead of tools, he used his internal energy. The moment he touched Haobo's pulse, it was like seeing an X-ray, a sinister black mass rising from the boy's stomach. He's been poisoned. What did he eat? The father froze. After a moment, he said a neighbor had been watching the boy earlier. That sparked judgment from the crowd, with someone accusing him of being irresponsible. The man broke down, fists clenched, tears falling. He was a widower working himself to the bone just to raise his son. Qin Li turned back to the patient. The dark energy was spreading fast. The diagnosis was clear. Haobo was on the brink of death. The rescue turned into a public trial. A bearded man started shouting that Qin Li's credentials were fake and that the clinic was a scam. The crowd quickly joined in, demanding proof and even trying to storm the place to take the boy to a real hospital. In the corner, Chen Wen and his people watched with cruel smiles, enjoying the chaos. Even the boy's father, overwhelmed by the pressure, snapped. He lunged at Qin Li, accusing him of lying and putting his son in danger. Qin Li didn't move an inch. He fired back coldly. Every second wasted arguing was one less second for the boy to survive. Seeing the poison about to take over completely, he made his decision. He ordered everyone to step back and ignored the father's desperate cries. Closing his eyes, Qin Li focused his energy. He didn't rely on normal methods. He tapped into the body's meridians, channels that connect life force to the universe. With rapid, precise movements, he struck key acupuncture points, channeling energy through them. The effect was immediate and violent. Haobo's cheeks swelled, turning dark for a moment. Then he expelled the black poison in a forceful vomit, purging his body completely. The result hit hard. The father hugged his son tightly as color returned to the boy's face. Moments ago, he had been dying. Now he was smiling weakly and even asking for food. Tears streamed down the father's face in pure relief. With the crisis under control and medicine prepared, going to the hospital was now just a precaution. The man bowed deeply to Qin Li, thanking him through tears, calling him a miracle healer who gave his son a second chance at life. The crowd's tone flipped instantly. The same woman who had been calling him a fraud stood there speechless. Shock turned into admiration, but not for everyone. In the shadows, Liu Minghao clenched his fist against the wall, rage boiling over. He and his allies had orchestrated the poisoning to destroy Qin Li's reputation, and now they were watching him become a hero instead. The old bearded accomplice murmured about patience, hinting that their war was far from over. As word began spreading, someone even calling their grandmother to share the news of the new miracle doctor, Qin Li slipped away, searching for a moment of peace. He stepped out through the back door of the clinic, exhausted. All he wanted was silence, but it didn't last. A strange glimmer in the bushes caught his attention. From the shadows, a girl stepped out, wearing training clothes and holding a blood-stained sword. Facing the dangerous figure, Qin Li didn't flinch. Calmly, he asked if she was there seeking help for a patient, or for something else entirely. The answer came instantly. She lunged at him, blade in hand. Qin Li dodged on instinct, trying to calm her, saying he was just a doctor, but the fight ended quickly. She collapsed to the ground, completely drained. Qin Li sighed, rubbing his temples. His night of rest had just turned into another emergency. Carefully, he carried her inside and laid her on an improvised stretcher. Her condition was critical, covered in scars and severe wounds. Right in the middle of treating her, his phone rang. It was Chu Qingming, asking if he was coming home. After a brief pause, Li told her he'd be staying the night at the clinic to handle a new case. On the other end, his wife puffed her cheeks, caught between annoyance and boredom as she stared at her phone screen. Li got everything ready, needles, vials, and medicine spread across a solid surface. As he cut the cord of an amulet around the stranger's neck to continue the treatment, something made him freeze. The object had gold details and a very specific symbol. It was a badge from the 19th Special Forces Unit. The shock hit instantly. What was an elite agent, part of a squad known for infiltration, sabotage, and information warfare, doing injured in his small clinic? Members of that unit were basically urban legends, the best of the best. While Li tried to process it, danger was already closing in. On top of a nearby building, a commanding young woman led a group of black-clad operatives, watching everything below. The elite squad's mission took an unexpected hit. Up on the rooftop, just as they were preparing to move, a sudden order came down. The 19th squad was dismissed from the operation for the day. The leader froze, stunned, unable to understand why they were pulled out so abruptly. Inside the clinic, the agent opened her eyes in the infirmary and let out a heavy breath, surprised to still be alive. A soft knock announced Qin Li's entrance. He smiled, relieved to see her conscious. While she asked if he was the one who saved her, Li, putting away his ointments, answered directly. Without help, she would have died within minutes. She looked at her scarred, bruised hands and tried to sit up, her body protesting every movement. As he organized his tools, Li laid it out bluntly. He knew she had nowhere to go, no home, no direction, and now no unit. Walking over to the window, he pulled the curtains open, letting sunlight flood the room like a fresh start, and made an unexpected offer. "I could use an assistant, what do you think?" She stared at him, stunned. She couldn't understand why he was offering a hand to someone as dangerous as her. Li was honest. The pay wouldn't make her rich, but it would be enough to start over. For that exhausted soldier from the 19th squad, it felt like a lifeline. In that moment, she decided she'd follow this healer to the end, ready to face any battle by his side. Li tried to send his new assistant back to bed to rest, but the peace was shattered by a loud scream from the front desk. Tang Ziding stormed in like a hurricane, waving 2 red tickets in the air. Ignoring the tension, she begged Li to come with her. He almost thought she'd lost it, but she was dead serious. She wanted him to represent her family at the prestigious Jade Games. The central plaza had turned into a packed crowd for the blind stone auction. Without wasting time, Tang Ziding dragged Qin Li along by his tie, ignoring how exhausted he looked after the previous night. The plan was simple. She had already called her father, a major jeweler in the region, who greeted Li with a firm handshake and a booming laugh. The old man didn't hide how excited he was to have him there. Caught off guard, Li kept a polite smile. Mr. Tang got straight to the point. He wanted Li as a strategic consultant for the event. He already knew about the young man's eye for rare finds and believed he was the key to winning the Green Dragon draw. The prize was massive. The winner would take both the sculpture and the top gemstone, the most valuable treasure of the night. To lock it in, the jeweler assembled a support team with Lao Hu, Wang Chao, and Shaolin backing Li up. The stakes were high. Ziding, worried about how much money her father was pouring into the auction, laid it out. Top 3 meant everyone walked away rich. But first place, Li would get 10% of the entire family jewelry empire. On top of that, she quietly assured him that, because of her friendship with his wife Ying, his effort wouldn't go unrewarded, even if they lost. Inside the main hall, the tension was thick. While Li examined a stone with a faint smile, Wang Chao threw shade, doubting someone that young could pick gems without relying on beginner's luck. Ignoring him, Li simply accepted the gold card Shaolin handed over. The message was clear. This game was for people with guts and deep pockets. Holding the card, Li only asked one thing: how much the opening bid would cost. Lao Hu smirked while Wang Chao kept mocking, saying Li probably couldn't even handle a small bet. To him, even $1,000 would be too much for a rookie like Li. Anything beyond that was a joke. As they walked off, Chao made it clear Li had no chance, and that small amount was all he deserved. Unbothered, Li stared at the gold card like he was trying to connect with it on a deeper level. Then everything changed. Standing in front of a pile of rough stones, his eyes widened. Among the rubble, one piece pulsed with a strange, intense energy. He almost shouted in excitement but held it in to avoid attention. The stone marked number 2000 was a hidden treasure. As he processed the discovery, a saleswoman approached, asking for the master's choice. Snapping out of it, Li confirmed he wanted that stone and handed over the card with $50,000 ready for the bid. Right behind him, the veteran trio showed up pushing a cart full of stones, overflowing with confidence that just one of them would be worth $5 million. The mood turned sour the moment the group saw Li's purchase. Wang Chao laughed in pure mockery, and Lao Hu told him to wake up. Shaolin, blowing out cigar smoke, didn't hold back. He told the kid to go home before embarrassing himself, saying Tang Yi would hate that choice. Li didn't even blink. He fired back calmly, saying the stone was his and the outcome wasn't anyone else's problem, reminding them he was there by the boss's invitation. Mr. Tang showed up, stroking his mustache, making it clear the final decision was his. Shaolin, eager to prove himself, assured him their cart stone was the winner and that a top 3 finish was guaranteed. The plan was simple: put the old man at the top, no matter the cost. Things heated up when veteran Tang looked at Qin Li's pick and gave his verdict. It was top tier, but the calm didn't last. Tian Zhong, dripping in gold chains, arrived with a young woman just to stir trouble. He went straight for the wound, reminding Tang how he got outplayed in the last auction, losing the winning gem right under his nose. Tang snapped back, telling him to mind his own business, but Zhong just laughed like he owned the place. The mockery even hit Qin Li. Tian ridiculed Tang for hanging around just anyone, suggesting he should pack up and leave Wuhan before losing what little dignity he had left. Sensing things about to explode, Shaolin stepped in. He told the boss to stay calm and let the team handle it, even suggesting a cheap excuse. They could just blame Qin Li and say he forced his way in. Meanwhile, the main hall erupted. On stage, the host Xing, elegant and commanding, took over the mic. She captivated the wealthy crowd and officially kicked off the auction. With the clock ticking, she teased the audience about who would land the winning bid of the night. In the chaos, Mr. Tang rushed to Qin Li, eager to see his trump card. Without hesitation, Li opened the box, revealing the stone, still sealed, ready for a checkmate. The ridicule came instantly. Shaolin laughed, saying that $20,000 rock wasn't even worth displaying, while Wang Chao faked sympathy for the loss. Mr. Tang, feeling the weight of wasted money, started regretting trusting someone so young, even after seeing the stone himself. At the same time, the auction screen was going wild. The first competitor revealed a gem with an imperial green core that stunned the crowd. Bidding exploded. 35, 38, 40 million climbing non-stop. Shaolin broke into a cold sweat. The game had barely started and the numbers were already insane. Host Xing hyped the crowd, mentioning bids hitting 63 million before calling Tang's team forward. Shaolin pushed the cart with their 2 main stones, silently praying for pure green inside. Next to the boss, Qin Li watched quietly, thinking spending millions on those rocks was like burning money. The tension on stage was suffocating as everyone leaned in to see the result. Then came the disaster. The stone cracked open and revealed nothing. Hollow, completely empty. Shaolin froze in shock. A $5 million piece worth 0. To their rivals, it was the final nail in Tang's reputation. Even Xing couldn't hide the disappointment, announcing they had fallen for a fake stone. Devastated, Tang closed his eyes, clutching his head. This felt like the end of the road. The funeral-like silence was shattered by Xing's voice. 1 stone remained. Under mocking stares, Qin Li stepped forward with his simple box. Tang, on the verge of tears, begged him to stop and spare them more humiliation. Ignoring him, Li began cutting the stone right there in front of everyone. The moment the blade touched it, Xing gasped. Beneath the rough shell, an intense imperial green glow burst out. The crowd went silent. The same people who mocked him were now frozen. Shaolin and the others burned with envy, The cheap stone was now humiliating everyone. Tang tried to stop him one last time, thinking he'd gone crazy, but froze mid-step. His face turned into pure shock. With a calm smile, Qin Li split the stone open completely. Inside was something unbelievable. A natural statue, perfectly formed within the gem itself, shining brighter than anything in the room. Xing, almost in a trance, identified it. A heliotrope jasper nugget, a one-of-a-kind piece worth $1 billion. The crowd exploded. The impossible had just happened. Calm as ever, Qin Li handed the piece to Tang, who held it like a miracle. The bidding turned into a war. 900 million, 1 billion, 1.2 billion in seconds. Up in the VIP box, the atmosphere shifted to awe. A young heir admitted it was a once-in-a-lifetime sight, while an older man in the back quietly coughed into his handkerchief, watching everything unfold below. The young heir panicked at the sight, but the old man just shrugged. At his age, health was unpredictable. Then, the gavel slammed down. The final price, 2 billion. Xing, glowing with excitement, koshed Tang as the champion of the night. The jeweler could barely process the massive profit, celebrating with his daughter while the crowd struggled to grasp the fortune that had just changed hands. From that moment on, the jewelry world would never look at Tang the same way again. With Qin Li standing with his back turned, the jeweler approached him with a serious expression. Bowing deeply, he thanked the young doctor, admitting that without his sharp instincts, his career would have ended in humiliating failure. He apologized for doubting him, and Li, with a calm smile, made it clear he held no grudges. But Tang didn't stop there. Stroking his mustache, he dropped the ultimate move. As an apology, the full value from the gemstone sale would go to Qin Li. The young man froze, shock written all over his face at such generosity, but Tang and his daughter shut down any attempt to refuse. To them, the family's honor had been restored, and the reward belonged to the one with the vision. Before he could even process it, a group of men in black suits surrounded him. With perfect manners, they handed over a luxurious envelope. It was a direct invitation from Jiang Jun, the powerful organizer of the event. The influential Zhang family from Wuhan specifically requested the young doctor's presence at their residence. During the ride to the Zhang estate, Qin Li tried to remember where he had heard that name before, but the mystery remained until the car stopped. The mansion was pure excess, a fortress of wealth. Impressed, he walked through the gardens as his arrival was confirmed over the radio. Priceless paintings lined the halls until he reached the main door, where a servant announced him respectfully. The one who greeted him was the heir, Zhang Jun Jr., the same young man who had been watching from the VIP box during the auction. He couldn't hide his excitement, welcoming the miracle man inside. At the center of the room, the patriarch Zhang Jun sat in a wheelchair, observing Qin Li with a sharp, clinical gaze. Li tried to stay modest, brushing off the hype around his achievement, but quickly realized the invitation had deeper motives. Laughing lightly, the old man got straight to the point. He wanted to know how Li had the confidence to keep cutting the stone, even after revealing the imperial green. Li explained that when he touched the rock, he felt a different kind of heat. He knew something deeper was hidden and needed to uncover its structure. The patriarch nodded, fascinated, about to suggest another treasure hunt, when a violent coughing fit interrupted him. The mood shifted instantly. Qin Li's expression turned cold and analytical as he stared at the old man. Sensing it, Jiang Jun realized his medical condition had just been exposed. Without hesitation, Li gave a grim verdict. Full recovery in that condition was nearly impossible. The illness was already in a critical stage. Jiang Jun let out a bitter smile, surprised that the young man wasn't just a master of gemstones, but also had such a sharp medical eye. Without wasting time, Qin Li mentioned his newly opened clinic and asked permission to check his pulse. The grandson hesitated at the boldness, but the old man waved it off. He had already seen the best specialists in the world, so there was nothing to lose. The moment Li touched his hand, he channeled his energy. The diagnosis hit him instantly. The old man's body was filled with a dense, lethal negative energy. To fight it, Qin Li pulled out his needles. The treatment was intense. He remained still for an entire hour, transferring vital energy in a deep trance. The results were immediate. Color returned to Jiang Jun's face, and he looked years younger within minutes. Raising his hand, the old man declared that the crushing weight in his chest was gone, but Li didn't relax. He warned it was only temporary. If they wanted a real cure, they needed to find the source of the infection. The grandson insisted his grandfather barely left the house, which led Li to ask directly, "Have you received any valuable or antique items recently?" The patriarch hesitated, but the grandson quickly remembered. a jade display stand recently acquired from an ancient burial site. Lee's expression darkened. Prolonged exposure to objects carrying grave energy was basically a slow death sentence. The realization hit hard. The old man felt a chill run down his spine, finally understanding that the cold from the grave he felt at night wasn't just in his head. Seeing how close his grandfather came to death because of a cursed object, Jiang Jr. made it clear. No gemstone was worth more than his life, and Qin Li would be rewarded no matter what. Li remained composed. Helping people was his duty, and he accepted the mission to retrieve the jasper. But first, he had a condition. The room went silent as he raised a finger, asking for their full attention. The grandson immediately agreed. Anything the healer wanted would be granted. That's when Qin Li pulled out an old photograph. It showed his parents, who had disappeared without a trace 10 years ago. His request was simple, yet heavy. He wanted information about their whereabouts. Jiang Jr. swallowed hard. 10 years was a long time, but he gave his word that he would do everything possible to find answers. Satisfied, Qin Li relaxed and returned to a professional tone, promising to begin the search for the jasper immediately. As a sign of good faith, Jiang Jr. handed him a card with an advance payment of 2 billion. It was just the beginning. The rest would come once the mission was completed. After a firm handshake and Qin Li's departure, Jiang Jr.'s expression turned serious. He knew the Jiang family was on the brink, and that young healer was now their last and only chance to restore their lost prestige. The next day, Qin Li returned to his clinic routine, rubbing his temples and preparing for another day of patience. The moment he touched the door handle, he was greeted warmly by a loyal patient. First in line was a short elderly man leaning on a cane, complaining about a relentless migraine. With a friendly gesture, Qin Li invited him inside, assuring him the problem would be taken care of. The atmosphere shifted when shouting suddenly erupted from across the street. A herald, flanked by 2 assistants, loudly announced the grand opening of the Tang Medical Center. The highlight of the promotion was Bo Huai Tang, a so-called prodigy who would personally treat patients. The announcement promised unmatched quality, leaving the man with the cane both confused and tempted by the offer. The spokesperson didn't hold back on the marketing. He claimed the Tang family's healing abilities had been passed down for generations, and that no other clinic in the city could compare. Swayed by the pitch, the man with the cane was about to sign up for treatment when the man leaned in and started spreading toxic rumors. In a malicious whisper, he slandered Li's methods, calling them nothing more than cheap quackery. The gossip didn't last long. Qin Li stepped forward with a cold expression, staring them down. Without hesitation, he accused the man of blatant slander. Caught red-handed, the loudmouth started trembling and tried to backpedal, claiming he was just repeating what he'd heard. In the middle of the commotion, Bo Huai Tang himself appeared. With an air of superiority, he criticized Li's attitude, calling it improper and suggesting with fake humility that he should be more understanding toward competition. With decades of experience behind him, the old Tang saw himself as the authority of Chinese medicine, looking at Qin Li as if he didn't even exist. With a smug tone, he called the man with the cane over to his clinic, promising a miraculous cure. Hopeful, the patient revealed strange wounds and bubbling sores forming on his scalp, something he had never seen before. The moment Bo Huai Tang examined them, his confidence cracked for a split second. He had no idea what he was looking at, but to save face, he forced a smile and claimed it was simple, promising to remove the ulcers in no time. Qin Li stepped in immediately. With authority, he warned that touching those without a fire needle would be a disaster and cause unbearable pain. Annoyed, Tang snapped that he wouldn't take advice from a pale kid and moved forward with a regular needle. Li shouted for him to stop, warning that it was a mutated herpes virus that couldn't simply be punctured. Too late. Tang pierced the blister. Blood sprayed out and the patient collapsed to the ground, writhing in unbearable agony. Panicking, the old doctor froze, unable to react to the disaster he had just caused. Qin Li rushed in to help, but Tang, blinded by pride, tried to block him, claiming the patient belonged to his clinic. Li's patience snapped. With a sharp strike to the face, he knocked the charlatan to the ground. The message was clear. You don't gamble with someone's life, and a mistake like that strips you of the right to call yourself a doctor. As the old man shrank back, Qin Li pulled out his needles infused with vital energy to contain the infection Tang had spread through the patient's body. He began an emergency procedure, racing against time with medicinal injections. Checking the man's pulse, Li's expression darkened. The condition was critical, and the damage was nearly irreversible. The virus had already spread too far, infecting the nervous system and draining the patient's vitality because of Tang's reckless mistake. It was terminal. With no time for gentle methods, Qin Li made his final move, the fire needle. It was the only technique capable of purifying the body and pulling the man back from the brink of death. The battle was invisible but intense. Channeling his energy, Li struck directly at the core of the infection. The patient let out a raw scream, not from pain, but as if the evil itself was being ripped out of his body. Seconds later, the miracle happened. The man opened his eyes, taking a deep breath as the festering wounds dried up and vanished from his head right before the crowd. Relieved, Qin Li stepped back, shaking his head at how a supposed master of ancient medicine could be so careless. But Bo Huaitong wasn't grateful. On the contrary, he burned with rage and humiliation at being saved by his rival. As Li helped the patient to his feet, Tang exploded in anger. He called the young man an idiot and, in a fit of wounded pride, challenged him to a fair medical duel, shouting that Li was nothing more than a lucky amateur. Qin Li stopped and glanced back, his face filled with pure exhaustion. He simply couldn't understand how someone who had almost killed an innocent person could still talk about honor and competition.